the Mutual Broadcasting System presents Richie and John.
Two voices strong in the podcast sphere. Richie and John, let's make it clear. Bringing the stories, bold and true. Standing with pride for the LGBTQ. The Mutual Broadcasting System, the network of pride. With Mutual, it's voices that are taking your side. Richie and John, hear the world echo your name. Fighting for justice, lighting freedom's flame. Champions of diversity, truth in the night. In the battle for equality, they're ready to fight.
The podcast that connects you with the people, events, headlines, and lifestyle interests of the global LGBTQ plus community. Here's Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Welcome once again to another episode of Richie and John. I'm John McMullen. Richie Roy is not with us on this episode. He is traveling this weekend, and he is off to California where he is dealing with family matters this weekend. So he'll be back with us on Tuesday when we join you for our next Newsday Tuesday episode. In the interim, I have invited James Apedaile. He is our military correspondent when it comes to dealing with all things related to the Department of Defense in the United States and the LGBTQIA plus community. And James is the National Vice President of American Veterans for Equal Rights. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you for having me, John.
So, a lot of stuff's been going on in this new administration. We're not even to 100 days yet, and it has shaken the ground that we walk on, and especially for members of the United States Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, Coast Guard. If you're in the military service in this country and you are queer, you are not necessarily safe at home, are you?
You are not.
Tell us, from your perspective, if you would, what's going on and what AVER is doing to address these issues as they come up.
Sure. Well, currently, the president has signed a transgender ban in the military. So everyone that's currently serving on active duty that is transgender, by the end of the month, they will have gotten notice that they are being exited out of the military. Some of them I know personally that have several years, and some of them are close to retirement, and they're not even allowing them to finish out their time to get retirement, but they're going to retire them at that time that they have currently served.
So they're not going to even have the benefit of having their time or being able to get their full retirement benefit as a result of what is going on. They're going to have to be docked for whatever period they're short of actual retirement time. Is that true?
Well, what'll happen is they'll get normal retirement, but it'll be show up as less than 20 years. So instead of having, and then there's some that have over 20 years and they can retire, but they were planning on staying in the military for a longer period of time and serving and using the experience. One of them I know personally is a pilot, and she has been trained. That's millions and millions and millions of dollars of training that they're getting rid of by booting her out of the military. I guess so much for their DOGE policy, huh?
You know, I think a lot of us thought that this whole gays and, LGBTQ people in the military matter was put to rest in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and that's clearly not the case. We're seeing other branches of government that are also being told to make significant cutbacks, not because of the fact that it has anything to do with their gender identity, but just in general. And oftentimes, judges are starting to rule that it is really what it is, which is that they're not being let go for a meritorious reason, but just to slash jobs. And they're saying, no, you got to rehire these people. Is there any hope that LGBTQ people will also face that same result with issues in court?
It will have to be resolved in court, but unfortunately, what probably will happen is that we'll eventually win the battle again like we did the first time with gays in the military, but it will take a while for it to actually be codified into law. And that's the only thing that's really going to happen to make sure that everybody is protected. And that was the mistake of when they allowed gays in the military, say open service, they didn't include transgender. And that's why it was under presidential declaration that they could serve. And then, of course, under Trump's first administration, he removed that, but he didn't go so far as to kick them out of the military. And so they all just laid low and made it through that first term. But this time he's coming after them and saying they got to be out of the military. And it's already been decided. So now they're all basically going to be without jobs here shortly.
So, as an organization, what do you guys do at this point to advocate with an unfriendly administration?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're joining up with other LGBT organizations, other veteran organizations, and trying to get as many people as possible in front of our senators and congressmen. And we're trying to do as many protests and as many things that we can to protect the rights that are happening. We're currently working on trying to get all of us to come together during World Pride and do a march, kind of a march on Washington in the mall there. And we're trying to schedule that and trying to work with World Pride, but we don't have that approved yet. And so we're working hard to try to make that happen. But there's also other things that we're trying to do. We're working with other LGBT organizations such as TAVA, and there's a couple others, MMA, which is Modern Military Association of America. We're just trying to work with all the different organizations that we can to try to fight the injustices that's happening. And unfortunately, it's just one of those things that we have to get re-engaged, get a lot of people that were disengaged because we won the battle, and now we're re-engaging those people to put as many faces that we can and fight all the policies. And unfortunately, it's just going to take that time. It's going to have to go to court. There's already lawsuits that are in place. It's just a matter of when they're going to be heard. And then,
are you guys working with Lambda Legal Defense and the ACLU, LGBT projects, etc.?
Yes, Lambda Legal is also one of them, ACLU. Lambda Legal is actually, I believe, representing one of the active cases currently going on right now with a couple of the transgender service members that are currently on active duty, and they're waiting for their case to be heard.
So let's say that the courts end up ruling that these people have to be reinstated, or at the very least have to be given, the benefit of having served a full 20 years or whatever the milestones are that are crucial when, trying to get appropriate benefits and whatnot that they would have otherwise have had they been allowed to serve out, and work for the military until retirement age. So under those circumstances, do you think that most people would come back to the military if the courts were to rule that they could have their jobs back?
I think there's obviously some of them will come back if they're allowed to come back. I think what's most likely going to happen, which is what happened a lot with under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, is that they'll win the court case, and then the federal government will basically settle with all of them in some way or another, whether it's, paying them off not to come back or allowing them to come back to finish their time if they're close to retirement, and then, out the door once they're 20 years, if they're that close. If they're not close at all, I know one is like he's at 12 or 13 years. So that's 7 years. They'll probably just settle out of court and give him, a nice little healthy settlement, but, still not retired,
Yeah.
But he's still eligible for benefits from the VA and that type of thing. But, it's one of those things that right now anything transgender related is being cut.
Now, I know that before he was confirmed, Pete Hegseth, who is the current defense secretary under President Trump, that he had some level of change of heart with regards to gays actually being able to serve in combat and things like that. Do you know, can you kind of tell us where that stands right now? Has that people who are gay and lesbian who are in the service, are they still being allowed to serve as long as they don't fall under the flag of the transgender community?
Currently, they can still serve. There's not any issue with that. But I think that once this goes forward, I think they're going to come after us also and try to roll back the gays in the military. So that's one of those things that we're concerned about. We have a little bit of precedence on our side that we've been serving for several years now, like 20 years under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then open service for the last, 5 years now? 6 years? Actually, it's longer than that. So that's the benefit of having that, but at the same time, if they're able to roll it back, they will. And then we have a bigger battle again, trying to get open service for all of the LGBT community, not just, the L and the G or the B.
How often does AVER and its board, how often do you all meet?
Our board meets once a month, and then we discuss the issues that are going on. And then we also try to reach out to other organizations and try to build coalitions. And we're, on a couple of lawsuits as trying to think of the correct legal term. I think it's ambius, but we're on the lawsuit, or
amicus.
willing to join the lawsuit and represent, what we know is true. But unfortunately, right now, the only resources we have is through the courts, and then getting Congress back engaged, for later on.
What other priorities do you guys have as an organization right now? If you're meeting on a monthly basis, obviously you've had a handful of months since the current administration, since you knew that they were going to be coming back into power, and now since they actually have taken power with a couple of months under the belt. What other kinds of things are at the top of your priority list for dealing with for the benefit of current service members and veterans?
Well, we're trying to make sure that they have community, that they have people that they know that are there for them when they are discharged, and that they're not alone. They have people that are willing to be there to help point them in the right direction to get whatever benefits they could possibly get. So we've been discussing a lot of different things. The main thing is right now, of course, the big battle is the transgender that we're losing. They're going to be kicked out, unfortunately, and now we got to fight it in court. But we're trying to make sure that they have a safe place to come to, that they know that their service is honored, and that they're respected, and that we're trying to build those coalitions we've been over the last several years been building relationships with our VAs locally and on a national basis. At our last convention, we had a representative from the VA talking about women's benefits that are at the VA, but we are also just trying to make sure that we have everything in place so everybody is covered, and that they know what's happening next.
Good. Well, how do folks who are either active or who are veterans and out but are concerned about, what's going on right now, how do they get involved? How do they communicate with you? How do they reach out and bring up issues that they might be experiencing if they're currently on active duty? How do you guys interface with them, and how can they get through to you?
Sure. Our website is AVER, AVER.us, and my email is vp@aver.us, and the president is president@aver.us. So you can reach out to us, or you can also reach out to admin@aver.us. All those email boxes are good, and if you reach out to us, we will respond. We have a person who handles all of our veterans affairs, who returns all those phone calls and makes sure that nobody's left behind, and that directs them to the correct resource if they need a resource, whether it's directing them to Lambda Legal for an attorney or directing them towards the VA or whatever the case may be. And there's some people that are still reaching out, trying to get their discharges upgraded from when they served before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And all those people are free to reach out to us. We have resources that we can direct them to if we can't handle it ourselves. Most of the time we outsource to other organizations that we partnered with to make sure that everybody is entitled to their benefits to get their benefits.
And earlier this year, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because earlier this year, I think it was in January, that there was a decision or I don't remember, was it a class action settlement, I think, that was done, and it affected like 35,000 people and how they were recognized or unrecognized in their discharges and things like that. Can you kind of give us an update on what the status of that is?
Unfortunately, most people have not either applied for that, or if they have applied, some of them have been denied because there's certain things that you can't be, that are not allowed under that. When it was the pardon happened with, because I remember assuming you're talking about the pardon, and with that, there are certain things that have to happen. You know, you couldn't have had another charge other than being gay in the military. And oftentimes there was other charges, and those all have to go through the Army or the Military Board of Corrections, whichever service that you were in. And then the Military Board of Corrections has to make that decision on whether or not upgrade them or not.
It had to do with like a less than honorable discharge or something like that, I think. And you couldn't have other issues that were attached to that also, besides the issue of sexual orientation, were an issue that would give you a less than honorable, or else there was a lot of hullabaloo around that.
Right. And the ones that have applied some of them have been denied that I've heard of, only because of the fact that they had other charges, and that has to go through the Military Board of Corrections for whatever branch they served. And then once that decision's made, and then possibly they can get their discharge upgrade. You know, it did us some good in some aspects because it draws attention to the matter, but it didn't go far enough with the correct directions. And so therefore, I think that people that were just kicked out because they were in the military oftentimes were being gay in the military. They're often added other charges. And those other charges are preventing them from getting that upgrade.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to continuing to follow up on these issues with you, and also as other things present themselves in terms of challenges because of this administration to LGBTQ people who have been in or are in the active military. We'll look forward to your reporting on that with us in future episodes. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you have a good weekend, and we'll look forward to getting more details as they become available.
Thank you for having me, John. Appreciate it.
You bet. And as I mentioned earlier, Richie will be with us again on Tuesday for our Newsday Tuesday edition of the Richie and John Show. And until that time, when we get back together, remember you can always find our telephone numbers, our email addresses, and whatnot are available from our website, which is www.richieandjohn.com. That's RICHIEANDJOHN. All of our contact information is there, and we appreciate you either listening to us where you get your podcasts or even going to YouTube and watching this as a video presentation now. Have a great weekend, and we will see you again for our Tuesday edition here on the Mutual Broadcasting System's Richie and John Show.
Thank you for joining us on Richie and John. This podcast is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System and is available at richieandjohn.com, as well as most major podcast portals, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify.
With courage bold and voices clear, for life, liberty, happiness, they persevere. Never in the shadows, they stand tall. For truth and freedom, they answer the call. Richie and John, hear the world echo your name. Fighting for justice, lighting freedom's flame. Champions of love, diversity, truth in the night. In the battle for equality, they're ready to fight. And as the fight goes on from sea to shining sea, Richie and John, you're the voice of the free. Keep shining bright, your impact will grow. The world stands with you on the Richie and John Show.